This photo was taken in the Middle East yesterday, but it is not in the Gaza Strip. It's in northern Israel. And Hamas did not launch the rockets that caused this fire. A different Iranian proxy did. I'm not going to say their name because the video will be taken down. But let's talk about what a war will look like on the northern front because it's looking increasingly likely that one happens. This war would take place between Israel and Iran's favorite proxy. Again, I'm not going to name them in this video. Not Israel and Lebanon. That proxy sits within Lebanon, but it is separate from Lebanon itself. And they are the most capable non-state actor, definitely in the Middle East, maybe in the world. And this Iranian proxy has fired over 4,400 missiles, drones, and rockets at Israel since October 8th of last year, right around the time of October 7th. And that has caused over 100,000 Israelis to have to flee their homes. They've not been able to be in their homes in almost 8 months, almost 9 months. And also a lot of Lebanese civilians in the south of Lebanon have had to flee their homes as well because of this border conflict heating up. The leader of this proxy says that they have up to 150,000 fighters, but Western intelligence believes it's somewhere around 30,000 fighters with another 20,000 in reserves. And they have fighting experience. They've fought alongside the Bashar al-Assad regime for the last 15 years in the Syrian civil war. The last time Israel had a conflict with this group was in 2006, and it decimated Lebanon. Lebanon still really hasn't recovered, and even though a lot of people think that Israel won that war, some Israelis don't feel like they won because there was so much destruction on the Israeli side as well. And it's only gotten worse. Part of that is because of the stockpiles that this proxy has built up. They have between 120,000 and 200,000 short and long-range missiles. They have unmanned drones, and they have a stockpile of around 500 precision-guided munitions. These can lock to a target, and they have an extreme degree of accuracy. Should an all-out conflict erupt, what will happen is this Iranian proxy that sits in southern Lebanon will launch barrages of thousands of rockets at Israel, mostly those short and long-range missiles, but a few of the PCMs. And they will aim these PCMs, again, they're extremely accurate, at Israeli cultural hubs, political hubs like the Knesset, their nuclear sites. And Israel will not be able to stop all of these rocket barrages with their multi-layered defense system. It will likely be overridden, and it would bankrupt Israel if they tried to intercept all of these rockets. So basically, during this time, Israelis will be spending a lot of time in their bomb shelters for a couple weeks should an all-out war break out. And Israel's been prepared for this, so they've built a lot of their critical infrastructure like hospitals so that they're capable of moving all operations underground, like the Haifa hospital, for instance, which is the largest city in northern Israel. It can move all of its hospital operations from above ground to what is now the parking garage and remain fully functional so that people can continue receiving treatments should they be under constant rocket fire by this proxy. But Israelis who sit right on the border, they have been displaced from their homes since the beginning of this conflict, since this proxy started firing at Israel on October 8th. And about 75,000 Lebanese civilians also abandoned their homes in South Lebanon because if this conflict erupts, it will be bad for them too, obviously. And unfortunately in Lebanon, they have not built all of their critical infrastructure underground. So the Lebanese will be less protected. And again, not all Lebanese are loyal to this Iranian proxy. So they're being dragged into a conflict which will really horribly affect them that they don't necessarily want to be in because they don't support the group doing it. And this proxy's done this to the Lebanese before. They got them involved in the Syrian civil war and the 2006 war. Both were not in the best interest of Lebanon. So when Israel moves to take out this Iranian proxy, what they will do is they're going to push them north of the Litani River. This is where this proxy is supposed to be sitting already. By still remaining armed and by being south of the Litani, they're actually in violation of binding UN's Security Council Resolution 1701, which is binding international law. But obviously they broke it, nobody's stopped them, so Israel will have to put them back in accordance with that kinetically. And they will do that with a combined ground invasion and airstrike campaign. Now, this Iranian proxy also apparently has Russian Wagner Group air defense systems. We saw Israel was easily able to take these same defense systems out in Syria in their counterattack on Iran in mid-April. But when Israel has to act against this Iranian proxy in South Lebanon, what that air defense system being present will do is force Israeli pilots to fly at a higher altitude, making whatever they drop less precise. They will have to combine this with a ground operation because a lot of these long-range and short-range missiles will be launched from bunkers within the hillsides of South Lebanon, as well as from the back of trunks, making it harder to detect these systems and take them out from an airstrike campaign. So this will be combined with a ground invasion. And this will be the bloodiest war we've maybe ever seen in our lives. This will be way worse than what we saw in Ukraine. This will be way worse than what we're seeing in Gaza for both the Lebanese side, the Iranian proxy that exists in Lebanon side, and on the Israeli side. In addition to acting in South Lebanon, Israel will also probably be firing targets in Syria. That is because it is really easy for this proxy to rearm, given that Iran basically has control over Syria. And we already see Israel do this. They frequently take out munition shipments into the airports in Damascus and Aleppo, Syria. Because Israel will be taking those strikes to take out supply routes, there will be people who say that Russia might get involved, and that's because Russia has complete air control over Syria as well as a bunch of bases in Syria. Now, I don't think that Russia will get involved because, like I said, Israel already strikes these airports in Damascus and Syria, and Russia effectively lets that happen. Also, Russia has their hands full in Ukraine. Also, Russia knows that Israel could easily take out all of their bases around Syria, and they don't want that to happen because should a NATO conflict break out, they want to maintain these bases so that they have bases right alongside Turkey, which is a NATO ally. But there will be calls that this could turn into World War III given potential Russia involvement. And Russia isn't the only outside actor that could get involved. There's a lot of talk that the US would get involved in this conflict, as well as France and the UK. France has a long time allyship and partnership with Lebanon. They were seen as the protectorates of the Maronite Christians, which used to be the majority population in Lebanon. So France has had a very close relationship historically with Lebanon. Should the US, UK, and France get involved, what that would likely look like is moving carrier strike groups off the coast of Lebanon, kind of like Biden did at the beginning of this conflict. We would also likely run counter air defense campaigns, so basically intercepting a lot of these rockets being fired from Lebanon into Israel. We would likely intercept those in a similar way that we did countering the Iranian attack on Israel from earlier, just in mid-April. But it's different, obviously, because there's way more spatial area between Iran and Israel versus Lebanon, South Lebanon and Israel. So it won't look exactly the same. The potential for all of this outside involvement is why a lot of groups have been restricting Israel and restraining Israel in the past. There's long been a thesis that once one of Iran's proxies is about to fall, such as the H group in Gaza, then another Iranian proxy, like their most valued one in South Lebanon, might step in to make it really hard to take out the remnants of that first proxy. This goes into Iran's entire axis of resistance strategy. Here's a graph of all of their different proxy groups. Basically, if Hamas was taken out of power in the Gaza Strip and they no longer have a militant wing, this Iranian proxy in Lebanon would be way more vulnerable because Israel in theory could divert its entire attention to this proxy. And this proxy is the last level of defense for Iran's nuclear program. Should they enter a breakout period, this proxy would protect from a coalition of US, French, and UK and Israeli invasion into take out those Iranian nuclear systems. So like I said, nobody wants this conflict, but the Iranian proxy in Lebanon will not stop firing at Israel. Because this proxy will not stop firing at Israel, really with no excuse. Sometimes they'll use the excuse that Israel occupies the Sheba Farms region. However, it's important to note that UN does not consider Sheba Farms Lebanese territory. But because they will not stop firing, Israel kind of has no choice but to institute deterrence. And I have no doubt that the IDF will be able to do that. I just think it will be a really awful, bloody fight to get there. So pray that a resolution can be reached between Lebanon and Israel and this Iranian proxy so that this all-out war does not happen, although it's looking more and more likely that it will.